Hi everyone. Today, our group want to present for our group assignment for subject History of Economic Thought from Group 10. For the group members, first is Yugita anak perempuan Tambi Raja, and then the second Adam Hakimi bin Asmi, and then Sri Ishita anak perempuan Gunasigaran, and me Muhammad Haikal bin Rizwan, and the last one Putra Ian Zikri bin Ahmad Fairul. Topic 10 is about Neo-Classicism, Chicago School, five major questions and contribution of Milton Friedman, Robert E. Lucas Jr., George J. Stigler, and Gary S. Becker is developing the new ideas of that school. Before we go further, I want to highlight for the table of content. First, part 1, introduction, and then part 2 is the main five major question, and the part 3, important economics, and part 4, conclusion, and the last one is past year question. Now we go for the introduction. On 1946, modern phase of the Chicago School began when Milton Friedman joined the university. And then Milton Friedman and George Stigler established the school unique identity. And then Gary S. Becker and Robert Lucas continue the tradition of Chicago School. The tenet of this school fit within the broader classical, marginalist, and neoclassicism tradition. The Chicago perspective is a variant of neoclassicism and is referred to new classicism.
Hi everyone, my name is Rishita Dr. of Gunasekaran. My metric number is 291855. Now I'm going to explain about the historical background. Many of the important developments in economic thought since the time of Marshall stimulated or at least rationalized greater government involvement in the economy. For example, the Pico's idea of externality. In his opinion, government should improve the allocation of resources through their subsidies and taxes. Next one is Robinson's theory of monopsony. In his thought, government should establish a minimum wage and promote labor unionism. Next one is Keynesian revolution basic premise. Government should use fiscal, monetary and income policy to stabilize the economy, become the new conventional wisdom. The next theory is imperfect competition and monopoly power. Imperfect competition, meaning by, is a competitive market situation where there are many sellers but they are selling heterogeneous, which means dissimilar good as opposite to the perfect competitive market scenario. And monopoly is an enterprise that is a only seller of a good or service. In this theory, government's regulatory role in the economy should be expanded. Next theory is economic theory of market socialism. Efficiently allocate resources and produce goods and services as could be private enterprise. And the last theory is theory of economic development, the only available instrumentality for breaking the vicious cycle of poverty in developing countries. But the member of Chicago School opposed their entire line of reasoning because Chicago School tried to maintain and strengthen the classical marginalistic and neoclassical tradition, which means laissez-faire system at the time when it diminished popularity because of Keynesian revolution. Next, I'm going to explain about the major tenets. There are 5 major tenets which are optimizing behavior, price and wages in general tend to be good approximation of their long-run competitive ones. Third is mathematical orientation. Fourth is rejection of Keynesian. And last one is limited government. first one is optimizing behavior. Stress the new classical principle who attempt to maximize their well-being, that is, they engage in optimizing behavior at the time of their decision. People who make rational choices, although such as the choice did not always produce the result that we expected, which means benefits and the costs are uncertain. You all can see that the formula of the basic economic unit is the individual. To reduce this uncertainty, the decision makers seeks information from MB equal to MBC. MB means marginal benefit and MBC marginal cost. We all can see that the one graph. Then that point is the main goal of us, which means MB equals to MBC. Consumer, workers and firms respond to monetary incentive and disincentive, which means we all can see the changes in MB and MBC. The next tenet is observed prices and wages in general tend to be good approximation of their long-run competitive ones. Price and wages reflect the opportunity cost to society at the margin. Divergences between actual and competitive price caused by two things, which is monopoly and monosomy, are in general inconsequential. This tended to establish clear property rights and encourage private negotiation can minimize externalities. Let's see the monopoly prices. Monopoly prices persist in the long run only instances where government block competitive entry, which means there is no barriers to entry in the market. Even those instances, competition will eventually generate new product or new service or new technologies that will undermine the monopolistic positions. The last one is institutional arrangements, which means seniority pay, large executive salaries, union contract and so forth. These all that on the surface appears to set wages and prices to be independent of a market forces usually exist because the parties involved in them as being efficient. The next one is mathematical orientation. The Chicago School relies heavily on the mathematical theorizing using two methods, which are Marshalling partial equilibrium method and another one is Walrasian general equilibrium approach. In simple way, one is partial equilibrium method and another one is general equilibrium approach. We all can see that there is a one table. That table shows the differentiation between partial equilibrium and the general equilibrium. Partial equilibrium developed by Alfred Marshall and general equilibrium developed by Leon Walras. In the partial equilibrium is related to single variable and general equilibrium is a more than one variable or the whole economy taken into the consideration. In partial equilibrium, there is a two assumption. One is ceteris paribus and another one is other sectors are not affected due to change in one sector. In general equilibrium, it's based on assumption in the various sectors are mutually interdependent. There is an effect on other sectors due to change in other sectors. Last one is partial equilibrium. Other things remaining constant, price of good is determined. In general equilibrium, price of good is determined simultaneously and mutually. And all product and factor market are simultaneously in equilibrium. The fourth tenet is rejection of Keynesianism. The economy is self-adjusting, or we can call self-correcting and regulating, with minor fluctuation being self-limiting. Several recession and depreciation result from inappropriate monetary policy, not from autonomous changes in spending, because monetary policy is based on the changes in interest rate. Changes in money stock cause the direct changes in the nominal gross domestic product rather than operating exclusive through the financial interest rate. Fiscal policy, which means changes in government spending and taxes, generally ineffective unless accompanied by the changes in money supply, and even in the latter case important in presence of rational expectation. The theory of sellers or cost push inflation in erroneous because inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. The monetary policy refer to action central bank take to pursue objectives such as price stability and maximum employment, while fiscal policy refer to the government revenues collection and spending decisions. Fiscal policy, which means changes in government spending and tax rate, and monetary policy is a changes in interest rate or money supply. Fiscal policy is set by government, while the monetary policy is set by central bank. Fiscal policy, there is a no specific target. Monetary policy has a specific target inflation. Fiscal policy side effect on government budget or borrowing. Monetary policy side effect is on exchange rate and housing market. Fiscal policy is the strong political dimension to changing tax rate, while the monetary policy mostly independent from the political process. The last tenet is limited government. Limited government is one where legalized force is restricted through the elected and enumerated authorities. Countries with limited governments have fewer laws about what individual and business can and cannot do. In limited government is inherently inefficient as an agent for achieving objectives that can be satisfied through private exchange. Moreover, government officials has their own objectives, and in limited government, regulation normally benefit those who seek the regulation or those who learn to marshal it to private advantage. Thank you. That's all from me. I pass this presentation to the next presenter.
Hi everyone, I'm Yugita and my metric number is 292330. So now I'll be presenting whom did Chicago School benefit or seek to benefit. There are three groups, which is society at large, corporate interests and high income groups. So for first, society at large, Chicago advocates help to convince elected officials and general population that a free market system with competitive markets produces maximum economic freedom, which in turn leads to the maximum level of individual and collective economic prosperity. Second, so moving on to the second point, which is corporate interests, less government regulation and paperwork. So as Chicago views have become more widely accepted, many corporate interests have benefited these privileges. First is advertising contributes to the competitive outcomes by providing consumers with information about alternatives from which they can choose that monopolize are scarce or short-lived and that merges in the market, which is market of corporate control. Next is additionally, the Chicago School also benefited high-income group by promoting the idea that tax system should be used to raise revenues, not to redistribute income. In Chicago School, the tax is cut two ways, which is they forbid government actions, yet they deter those who depend on government for subsidies, employment, regulation or special legislation. So now I'll be presenting the next part, which is how was the Chicago School valid, useful or correct in its time. There are 2 points, which is preserve the legacy of classical marginalist and neo-classical economics. Second is keeping alive monetary view of Fisher. So for the first point, preserve the legacy of classical marginalist and neo-classical economic. For this, Chicago School always maintained a strength and marginalist tradition at a time when it has to diminish the popularity. It also helps to preserve the long legacy of classical, marginalist and also neoclassical economics while the Keynes revolution was dominating the intellectual scene. Economics have also once again turned and also proved that microeconomic analysis has expanded their insight view into the issues of a day, which includes the exclusive domain of microeconomic theories. For example, an analysis of unemployment now includes and emphasizes microeconomic theories of job research and intertemporal substitute of work and leisure. So the second point, which is keeping alive monetary view of Fisher. So for the history, a bit of history, rapid inflation in 90s and also early of 80s turned the nation's attention away from the main concern of Keynesism, which is more likely to give importance to unemployment, and to the concern of Fisher and FRIEDMAN, which is inflation, more towards inflation. The simultaneous inflation and unemployment of the same period is also known as stagflation, lead to the post-Keynesian to call for income policies, although they are acknowledged that such policies would likely produce negative side and effects on efficiency. Apart from that, new classicists arguing that long-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment was preserved the optimistic of classic perspective that economic efficiency, price stability, and a natural rate of full employment are mutually attainable.
So moving on to the next part, which is which tenet of Chicago School became lasting contributions. So for the new classical ideas have already penetrated deeply into the curriculum of US universities. For instance, the major textbook on a principle of economics have already stated all the chapters on the new classical microeconomic perspective and also theories, including the discussion of a natural rate of unemployment, rational expectation, a long run vertical Phillips curve, and short run versus long run aggregate supply. Apart from that, the Chicago theories of human capital, household production, job search, and discrimination all are discussed also within the textbook on contemporary labor economics. So this case is flexible for foreign exchange rates in the standard which is fair in international economic textbook. Okay, moving on to the cost theorem of externalities. It is although a still controversial topic, but it is still treated in the textbook on public finance and also environmental economics. So as a conclusion and to make it short, several of the ideas which is presented by the member of Chicago School, it is broadly defined and also appear likely to become the lasting value. Nevertheless, a final assessment of this contribution must always await the security of our children and our grandchildren. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Adamukim Ibn Asmi. My matrix number is 288188. Next, I'll be presenting about important economies. There are 4 important economies. I'll be explaining 2 of them. So let's go straight to the biographical details. Milton Friedman lived from 1912 until 2006. He's a leading figure of the Chicago view. The education part is he have bachelor degree on Rutgers University, master in University of Chicago, and PhD in Columbia University. He joined the faculty of Chicago at 1946 until his retirement at 1977. The achievement he achieved is President of American Economic Association in 1967 and also the Nobel Prize in Economic Science in 1976. After his retirement, he continued to serve as a senior fellow at Hoover Institution at Stanford University. His ideas are unknown to wide spectrum of the American public. He also served as a columnist for Newsweek and also wrote a popular book, participated in an education television series, and delivered addresses to numerous groups. So now let's move on to the consumption function. There are 2 ideas, which is main idea and sub ideas. The main idea is Friedman theories of the consumption function challenge Keynesian's consumption function, suggesting that a household's consumption is determined by their permanent income and rather than their current incomes. The sub-ideas is people attempt to maintain a stable standard of living, and changes in income are considered temporary and do not greatly affect the present consumption. The consumption only responds to the change in income that are viewed as permanent. MPC is out of change in current income is smaller than the Keynesian theory. Investment multiplier is smaller, implying that internal instability in the economy is overstated. So now let's go detail in the consumption function. Friedman published a theory of the consumption function theory in 1957, and he suggests that Keynesian consumption function is too simplistic. A household consumption is determined by permanent income rather than current income. So the current income is equal to permanent plus temporary. Change of temporary income will not influence people's present consumption as they will maintain their stable standard of living. Consumption only responds to the change in permanent and long-lasting income. So now let's go into detail about the Friedman theory and Keynesians. Friedman said the change in consumption only depends in permanent income, and the formula is C equal to CYP. The Keynesian said change in consumption depends on the permanent and temporary income. The formula is C equal to C0 plus CYD. By using the marginal propensity to consume, which is MPC formula, MPC of changes in current income is smaller than the Keynesian theory. So now let's go into detail about the formula. So let's go to the MPC formula, which is change in consumption over the change in income. So the numerator, which is the change in consumption, is smaller to overall value will be smaller. But the Keynesian formula, which is multiplier K or whatever, is equal to 1 over 1 minus MPC, which is MPC is smaller, denominator became larger, so overall value K can become smaller. The investment multiplier is smaller, implies that the internal instability in the economy is overstated. So now let's move on to the money theory. The demand of money. For his theories, which is Friedman, on the function of money in economy, Friedman is most well known. He covered a number of connected subjects in his respect, such as the quality of theory of money and the desire of money. Also, cash and imbalance are in high demand since they are useful to the bearer. Friedman, in contrast, or Keynes, did not distinguish between the different sort of money, such as transactional and speculative balance or ideal and active balance. Next is the three major determinants. The first one is total wealth. The strongest indicator of total wealth, including a human capital, is a steady revenue stream. People's desires to store more cash in their accounts rises in tandem with wealth and steady income. The second one is cost of holding money. Less money will be kept due to the higher cost, the interest rate and anticipated rate of inflation, and the level of prices all affects these expenses. For example, the Friedman's theory. The third one, which is the last one, which is preference. Fundamental beliefs regarding carrying and spending cash is the third important factor influencing the need for money. These preferences, according to the Friedmans, are mostly unchanged over significant stretches of space and time. Next is the modern quantity of theory money. A rise in the money supply will result in people having more cash on hand than they would want. The part of individual to get rid of cash will raise demand for goods and services to leading and increasing in output, price, or combination of all three. In the near term, the demand for money is rather steady according to Friedman. The money supply is regulated by the Fed system, which is Federal Reserve. The amount of money that is provided and demanded eventually return to the balance but a higher price level. Friedman claims that establishment and contemporary quality theory of money. Unlike the previous quantity theory, it makes the assumption that the demand of money is highly stable, more stable than functions such as consumption function that are offered as alternative keys relations rather than that velocity is constant. Now, let's move on to the Friedman's long-run vertical Phillips curve. As you see the graph on your right, every short-run Phillips curve illustrates the range of inflation and employment that might occur when the real inflation rate divides from the forecast rate. When inflation exceeds the forecast, like when P2 exceeds to P1, unemployment momentarily drops below the natural rate. from UN to U1 as seen as Act B. However, the short-run Phillips curve changed from SRP1 to SRP2, and the unemployment rates return to its normal level once P2 becomes the anticipated rate, which is C. There is no long-term trade-off between the unemployment and inflation, given the long-run Phillips curve is vertical, and the variety of inflation rates can coexist with the natural rate of unemployment. The biographical details. This man was born in Yakima, Washington on September 15, 1937. He got a BA and PhD degrees at University of Chicago. He was awarded to the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1995. He was influenced by the Friedman's and Samuel's Foundation of Economic Analysis. His first taught at Carnegie Mellon University from 1963 until 1974. After that, he returned to the Chicago University when he finished his study at Carnegie Mellon University. So now, as you can see on the screen, there are three books that he produced. First one is Adjustment Cost of the Theory of Supplies in 1967. The second one was Optimal Investment Policy and the Flexible Accelerator in 1967 also. And the last one is Real Wages, Employment and Inflation with Leonard and Rapping in 1969. So now let's move on to the rational expectation. People base their prediction about the future inflation of previous and current inflation and only adjust them in response to the fresh information. But this man Lucas, he goes beyond the Friedman's analysis, which suggests that economic actors rationally anticipate the current stabilization policy's future results. To successfully forecast future price level change, market players must consider their previous mistakes, use and analyze the available data, and successfully eliminate the regularities and errors. Lucas also developed the implication of rational expectation for macroeconomics theory and policy, even though the concept itself was not novel. People quickly raise their expectation of inflation when the government implements expansionary fiscal and monetary policies, since they are aware that this action creates inflation. The resource and financial markets instantly react to give nominal salary increase to workers, higher prices to sellers of capital goods and raw materials, and nominal interest rate increases to lenders. People instantly raise their expectation for inflation when the government implements expansionary fiscal and monetary policies, which causes inflation. Expansionary monetary and fiscal policies are rendered ineffectual by these responses and anticipated inflation. The economy goes immediately from A to C, as in figure 24.1, as opposed to the transient increase in output, employment and profit that are suggested by the transition from A to B. That is the prompt and direct implementation of expansionary fiscal and monetary policies. As you can see, the bottom left from the slide is adaptive versus rational expectation. So, the adaptive expectation based on Friedman's work that people use past events to predict outcomes, but the rational expectation based on Lucas' work that people are rational and use available on information. Now let's move on to the Lucas aggregate supply analysis. In contrast, an anticipated change in aggregate demands has no effect on real output and employment. An anticipated change in aggregate demands does affect the level of real output, but only temporarily. Lucas' analysis distinguishes between the short-run and long-run aggregate supply. And that's about it. That's all from me. I'll pass to my friend Ian. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Now I will be representing about George J. Stigler. For his biographical details, he was born on 70th January 1911 in Seattle, Washington, United States of America. He graduated from the University of Washington with a BA, and he obtained his MBA from Northwestern University, also to earn his PhD in economics in 1938. From 1936 to 1938, he was a lecturer at Iowa State College. and he also worked at Columbia University during the World War II, conducting statistical and mathematical research for the Manhattan Project, and he also attended Brown University for a year. Stigler was also awarded the Nobel Prize in economic science in 1982. So let's move on to the economics of information. Okay, the economics of information means information is valuable since the right buyer is more likely to find the right seller. Middleman is often knowledgeable about a market, which is valuable. This leads to the question, how much information is optimal? So let me give you another example. Let's say if I want to buy a bread, so I tell the seller I want to buy a bread. So that is the information that I give. So it is valuable so that the right buyer is more likely to find the right seller. So the seller can know what I want to buy because I already tell them the information that is needed. Okay, based on the graph, the optimal amount of information. So as we can see, on the x-axis is units of information and the y-axis is dollar per unit. So the marginal cost of information intersects with the marginal benefit of information. The optimal amount of information in orange occurs where marginal cost equals to marginal benefit at point I prime. Yes. George J. Stigler also pointed out that information is an economic good. Consumers decide how much information to obtain by comparing marginal benefit and marginal cost. Means how much benefit we can get and how much cost we need to give up. So the optimal amount of for that, if marginal benefit increase, marginal cost will decrease, and vice versa. Optimal amount of information is where MB, marginal benefit, is equal to marginal cost. So we move on to a more complex example, which is a consumer in the market in searching for a new car. The MB, marginal benefit of additional information such as utility associated with locating a particular brand and style that matches one's wants, as well as associated with discovering a low price, declines as more information is obtained. So for the marginal cost, additional information such as transportation and other search expenses, the opportunity of cost time, utility sacrifice by delaying the purchase generally rises as consumer obtain more of it. Means if MB is more than MC, consumer will continue to seek additional information. However, when MB equals to MC, consumer will stop looking for additional information. George A. Akerlof extended Stigler's analysis of information. Akerlof asks a rather simple question. Why does a new car lose so much value when the buyer drives it off the sales lot? If physical depreciation is the culprit, then why can the same new car sit for weeks or even months on the lot and not lose value? Akerlof answered, which earned him a share of the 2001 Nobel Prize in Economics, was that some market contains asymmetric information. So if you don't understand asymmetric information, based on the image on the right side, the buyer thinks the value of car is 3,000, but the seller knows the value is 2,000. Yeah. Okay, now we move on to the last economist, which is Gary S. Becker. Basically, Gary S. Becker, it focuses more on investment in human capital. Okay, so I will explain it more detail. He also introduced the theory on family, which contains theory of marriage, fertility, altruism, and divorce. So, he was born in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, to a Jewish family on 1930. He was an undergraduate in University of Princeton, 1951. He obtained his PhD in University of Chicago in 1955 with a thesis entitled "The Economics of Racial Discrimination." Such a very interesting topics. He was also a professor at Columbia University during 1957 until 1969. He joined University of Chicago and appointed as a professor of economics and sociology in 1970. He was also the president of the American Economic Association in 1986. He began contributing columns for Business Week on the mid-1980s. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1992. Sadly, he died in Chicago, Illinois in 2014 at the age of 83, which is 10 years ago for now. And his most contribution is he extended the economic approach with its combined assumptions of maximizing behavior, stable preferences, and market equilibrium into the traditional domains of sociology, political sciences, law, social biology, and anthropology. Okay, now is the investment in human capital, college education, which is very relatable to us who are studying in college, right? Okay, based on the graph, the decision to attend college for investment depends upon the expected return on one's investment. Okay, it means the higher we study, they believe that the higher we can earn, the higher the return, yes. Without college, the individual for whom the information the figure applies could expect the annual earnings shown in line H. High school, yes. With college, the earning lines become C, the high one. Okay, so on the graph, the number one, direct cost, which is direct cost. Direct cost is such as tuition and books, and we pay the URA, the fees, the accommodation, right? Some of us, we need to be grateful because we got NRCs, but other university, they only got for one semester, I think, and then they need to find their own house and rent it every month. Okay, number two is indirect costs, which take the form of earning during the investment period. Okay, the number two, form of foregone earning. Okay, the foregone earnings here means that, for example, I didn't go to college to further my studies, so I can work, and then the earnings that I get is the foregone earnings. Yeah. Once the college graduate enters the labor force, will earn more than would have earned with a higher school certificate. Yes. It means if you look at the college line, the higher means the higher the further you study, the higher you will earn. Yeah, this is what Gary S. Becker want to say. The investment decision requires a comparison of the present value of the annual increment to earnings with the present value of direct and indirect costs, which means if 3 is more than 1 plus 2, the net present value is positive. So as we can see on the previous slide, the 1 and 2 area is small, right? The 3 area is very, very larger. So this means that the net present value is positive. So the investment will take place. We will further study higher, not only degree, but can further to master and PhD and so on. This condition applies to all human capital investment decisions, such as decision by worker to move a new location to work. Yeah, if they can earn more by joining a new company, so they will choose to work at other company. a decision by a firm to provide on-the-job training to its workers so that it can increase their workers' skill, and also a decision by a developing nation to use resources to improve the general health of its workforce. In each case, the decision maker with future gains against present sacrifices. So this means we are studying right now. So we are sacrificing the opportunity to work earlier, but by we further our study. But Gary Becker stated that if we further study more, it means that we can earn more. We can have more money by the certificate, by the level of certificate that we hold. So he stated that my work on human capital began with an effort to calculate both private and social rates of return to men, women, blacks and other groups for investment in different levels of education. Okay, that is what I explained before. Okay, for on the family. Okay, this is an interesting part. In a treatise on the family, Becker analyzed the allocation of time to children and to market work, marriage, divorce and polygamous, as well as monogamous societies, altruism in addition to selfishness in families, intergenerational mobility, and many other aspects of the family. So, Gary S. Becker focused more on theory of marriage, fertility, altruism and divorce. There are 4 things that he focused. First one is the theory of marriage. Marriage allows for a division of labor that enables partners to maximize their joint production and consumption of commodities which provide economic well-being. Reproducing and raising children are central commodities that marriage facilitates. Partners form a household out of economic self-interest. The person commanding the highest market wage opportunity will probably work in the market, while the person with the highest relative productivity in domestic activities will produce the household goods. Differences in productive capacities between marriage partners imply large differences in allocation of time among labour market time, household production time and consumption time. Positive sorting between high quality men and women typically occurs in marriage. Complementarity in production is one of the causes. The advantages, characteristics of one spouse raise the other's marginal contribution to the production of full income, which is broadly interpreted to encompass commodities. It means here that both of the partners they work to get full income. So the next part is fertility. Family produces children, right? However, children involve direct and indirect cause. I don't know if he said this in a positive or negative way. Okay. Direct and indirect cause means of course if we want to have a children, it involves many causes such as the labor, right? The hospital, the bills, right? And also when they had given birth, we need to buy their diapers, their milks, and all such other things. So as I said, food expenditure, shelter, clothing. Yes, clothing. Opportunity cost of time. Indirect cost is the opportunity cost of time. Young children are time-intensive commodities. Fertility will depend on the price of children, parental income, and the trade-off that parents perceive between the quantity of children and their quality. So basically, Gary S. Becker, he said that every children has their own price, not like they have tag on their body. It means that how quality their children are, and the quantity also. Okay, so the third part is altruism. Altruism, I know you guys, a few of you guys didn't know the meaning. So altruism is the principle and practice of concern for the well-being or happiness of other humans or animals above oneself, which mean dia macam concern lah, concern dekat orang lain macam tu. When someone's utility rises because it increases for someone else, that person is said to be altruistic. Altruism adds to the potential gains from marriage. One family member's joys adds to the other family member's joys. Macam kalau if let's say I had three brothers, so if my family adds another one, so it will add more joy. In what Becker colorfully referred to as the rotten kid theorem, he established that altruism in the family will tend to overcome selfishness. So basically, realistically, concerning about our family members can overcome selfishness, right? Every beneficiary, regardless of how self-centered, maximizes his benefactor's family income. Nobody will want to take any action that may lessen their chance of inheriting anything. But the restraining effect of altruism on self-interest diminishes with the number of benefactors, that is, with the size of the family or organization. So, for the last part is divorce. Divorce is when a married couple decide to split up, right? Unfortunately, nowadays there is many famous case for this topic between the celebrities, but I don't want to touch that. That is very sensitive. So, marriage partners search for information about prospective mates. The longer the search, the longer the gains from marriage are delayed. A rational person will continue to search for additional information until marginal benefit equals to marginal cost. However, people often get married even though they have incomplete information about their partner. This can be seen when one parent asks let's say his daughter, he said that, Siti, you need to marry this boy. This boy is very good. Like that. That is set up marriage. And such information reveals itself through the marriage. Divorce may become a new optimal decision. So, when Siti dah kahwin dengan this boy, nama dia Ali lah, Ali. Siti married Ali, but Siti didn't know him well. So they married first, and then Siti will know his behavior, right? So if Siti didn't like this Ali, Siti will ask for divorce to Ali, like that. Unexpected good or bad fortune increases the likelihood of divorces, because it may turn an optimal match into one that one part may no longer judge to be optimal. It means that marginal cost is more than marginal benefits.
In conclusion, that I can highlight, the first Chicago School of Economics began in 1946 when Milton Friedman joined the faculty at the University of Chicago. And then, the five major tenets of Chicago School is first, optimizing behavior; second, observe prices and wage in general trend to be a good of their long-run competitive ones; and third one, mathematical orientation; fourth, rejection of Keynesianism; and for the five, limited government. The Chicago School strong belief in the market system, laissez-faire, its benefit many corporate interests and high income group. And Chicago School was valid, useful, and correct in its time because it helped to preserve the long legacy of classical, marginalist, and neoclassical microeconomic theory, while the Keynesian microeconomic revolution was dominating the intellectual scene. keeping alive the monetary views of Fisher during a period when they could have become permanently buried by the weight of Keynesian ideas. That's all for topic 10 and from our group presentation. I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.